Ever realize that Nintendo has a ton of different game series? Like, when you think of Nintendo, what do you think of? Most people immediately go to their heavy hitters like Mario or Zelda. Some will go to their less frequently visited ones like Star Fox or Metroid. But what about their dead and long forgotten IPs? F-Zero was the most well-known one, but I'm talking about games like Eternal Darkness, Golden Sun, and Chibi Robo, series that have very few entries and haven't been touched in any significant way for years, despite having fans that would love to see more of these games. Which leads us into today's topic, Sin and Punishment. Released in the year 2000 on the Nintendo 64, it was originally a Japan exclusive game until coming over to the West on services like the Virtual Console on Wii and the Nintendo Switch Online service, which is how I played the game. The game was co-developed by Nintendo and Treasure, the latter of which being known for games such as Gunstar Heroes, Mischief Makers, Ikaruga, and many other games, with the game being in the rail shooter genre, where you move on a set path and shoot at various enemies as you progress through a stage. Sin and Punishment is such a weird yet interesting game that I really want to talk about in as much detail as I can, so I do hope I can do it justice and can even get a few of you guys to check it out. In the far-off, distant future of 2007, the world is in a very rough shape. There is a famine that has overtaken the world, and to make things worse, the world is also under siege with what seems to be mutated entities called ruffians, and a group called the Armed Volunteers that are trying to stop the ruffians, but are pressing the Japanese people during the process. Enter Saki Amamiya, no relation, a member of a resistance group that takes a stand against both the ruffians and the Armed Volunteers, the resistance seemingly led by a young girl named Achi, who calls all the shots. She also has psychic powers and can teleport and such. In a typical stage, Saki will automatically move forward with you the player being able to move left and right. There is a time limit to each section of the stage that, when it hits 0, will start causing you to lose health. Beating a boss will cause you to get a time bonus, so dealing with bosses quickly and efficiently is definitely the play. Now bear with me because the control scheme is pretty weird. On the original N64 controller, you'd use the control stick to aim, the Z button to shoot, the left bumper to jump, and the left and right C buttons to move. On the Nintendo Switch Online, a lot of this was translated well, with the left control stick being used to aim, ZR being the shoot button, and the left bumper being the jump button. Now when it comes to moving, the NSO service has the X and Y button as left and right as default. But an issue arises when you take into account that when you hold the ZR button, it changes the functions of the face buttons to those of the C buttons. For example, while the A button would work like normal while holding ZR, the A button would then work like the left C button. So while playing this game, I just constantly hold the fire button since it's easier on my brain to move that way and constantly switching between two control schemes. I wish you could use the right stick like you can in games like Star Fox 64, but whatever, I guess that would make too much sense. It takes a lot of getting used to, but once it clicks, it can feel pretty satisfying to get the hang of, especially since movement is very important for this game. You can get around by just moving left and right, but you will soon learn that that won't get you very far. You have dodge for one. You can use it by tapping left or right twice, causing you to roll in either direction, which will have you invulnerable for a brief while. You can also use your jump and double jump as a way to get over certain obstacles. While jumping, you can still shoot and damage enemies, where while dodging you cannot, so in certain fights and encounters you have to decide which would be best to use, which is very important for the higher difficulties, which will see you dying over and over and over and over and over again. Kinda glad I'm playing this on the NSO. Your offense is a bit more simple, but has a little bit of nuance with it. While holding the fire button, you will continually fire your gun pretty much for forever. There is no limited range or ammo, so there's little reason to not always have the trigger held down. But Saki's gun also has a blade, where holding the fire button keeps you shooting. If you tap it while an enemy is close enough to you, you can perform a melee attack that can do a ton of damage. You can even use your melee attack to deflect certain projectiles and send them back towards your enemy. Some projectiles are more obvious with the fact that you can deflect them than others, so experimenting with which ones can and can't adds a good bit of risk and reward. You can also change the fire reticle to one of free aim or to one that locks on. I mostly use the free aim one because it's just easier for me to just aim whenever I can. but the lock-on one does come in handy in certain boss fights, and I do recommend using it if you feel like you should. Getting back to the story, I have to let you guys know that this is my best interpretation of what was going on. I'll get into what I mean later, but after a little bit of fighting off the ruffians and armed volunteers, you come across a leader of the armed volunteers named Kachua, who is trying to protect a giant ruffian named Rodon. You beat her, which causes her to tap into some secret powers that she has because of some blood that was infused with hers by a mysterious guy named Brad, which destroys a part of Japan. In response, Achi awakens something inside of Saki that causes him to turn into a kaiju, where he in turn beats the kaiju Kachua, but Saki isn't in control, and Achi is forced to teleport herself and Iron away, where you end up on Brad's ship, where you run through and beat him as Iron. Afterwards, Kaiju Saki shows up and he's starting to rampage, and the only way to get him to stop is by going inside his heart to calm him down, which Achi has Iron do. Before that though, Achi gives Iron an illusion of being 10 years in the future, where you see a rampaging Saki with his and Iron's future child named Issa to trick her into shooting Saki to put him to sleep. Achi then tells you that she has enemies from far away that she wants to fight, and that she needs soldiers to fight that war and wants Saki to be seen as a symbol of that. Iron just brings Saki back to his senses, and he tells Achi he doesn't want to be a part of this war she's trying to start, which leads her to abandon the Earth and try to create a copy that will replace it, so she can lead them to be what she wants. Saki does destroy the copy Earth, and Achi is stopped, and you see as she contemplates on how Saki and his future son are establishing a new form of life on Earth, and that her enemies that are coming could be stopped by them as she dies, I guess? The game ends with Saki and Iron having a conversation about the events of the game, as well as the future, as they have to make preparations to make a world a better place for their child. So that was a story. I'm really hoping I was able to explain it well, since a lot of the story is hard to pick up and the game starts you right in the middle of the conflict. So things like what the ruffians are, never mentioned in the story. The armed volunteers, I don't even think they said the name in dialogue. Looking through the credits of the game shows no credited writer, so we can only assume that maybe the director of the game also came up with the story? I don't know, but the story is fucking weird regardless. It does kind of remind me of anime like Dead Leaves or Fully Cooley, where they have really confusing stories with too much going on to be able to grasp everything, so they're much better to experience by just kinda experiencing it. But with something like Fully Cooley, there are themes and deep characters to analyze. Sin and Punishment just feels like they wanted to make a weird story and didn't really care, which I can personally get behind. I don't need a game to have a good story, especially when the core gameplay is fun, and I believe that Sin and Punishment is a fun game. I played through it twice, and after I was able to wrap my head around its controls, it felt really satisfying to play. Pair that with some split-second decision making and some pretty tough difficulty makes for a nice game you can beat at best right under an hour, or over 2 if you're using save states, but I won't tell if you won't. I don't know where else to put this, but the voice acting...
Saki! Oh, Saki! Good morning, Saki.
Good morning, Iron.
Perfect. Sin and Punishment is one of those random games that can just fascinate me. I was a little aware of the name before playing it, but gave it a full shot when I got access to the N64 games on the Nintendo Switch Online service. As much as I would love for people to watch this and go and play it and maybe find a new favorite game, I had to be very clear and say that this game is definitely not for everyone. While developing, they knew the control scheme would be weird even for the N64 controller, and the NSO doesn't do anything to remedy this. The story is confusing and hard to follow, and while I personally love the way the game looks, between the environments, the monsters, and even the models of the characters, look at these guys, they look so weird! Despite everything going against this game, I still really enjoyed it though. The music is also kind of a mixed bag, some legitimately great songs, paired with some interesting choices, with some songs having time signatures that would make the Kirby composers blush. All in all, good game weird, and there's no way to ever make another one of these. Well, there's no way to ever do it again.